So now we have a name for our new nation, Israel. A new name for this new nation. It's an interesting name, again, to give to a nation. Who are you people? We're the people who wrestle with God. Well, in a world history course, we'd have some more to say about David. David will make Israel a significant player, militarily, economically, diplomatically, in the Mesopotamian world. So we'd have some things to say about David in a world history course. In a literature course, you might be reading some of the poetry attributed to David. For us in this course, maybe the most important thing about David is that as the first undisputed king of this new nation, he becomes in Hebrew literature the symbol of the powerful king. When there are references to David in Hebrew literature, it's usually a reference to his power as a king, and that's going to show up later in our discussion. Well, like I said, in a world history course, we'd have a lot more to say about David. In a literature course, you'd be reading some of his work. But eventually David dies, and there's yet, believe it or not, another civil war over who's going to become the next king. But this is a very short civil war. It only lasts for maybe about a week, and David's son Solomon comes to the throne. In a world history course, we'd have some things to say about Solomon. Solomon will take Israel to its height of power in a political and economic sense in the Mesopotamian world, and really make Israel a significant player, not a major power, but a significant political, economic, diplomatic power. In a literature course, we might be reading selections from some of the wisdom literature that's attributed to Solomon. Solomon gets a reputation for being very wise. If you hear someone referred to as being as wise as Solomon, this is the guy they're talking about. He gets a reputation for being very wealthy. So if someone being described as being as rich as Solomon, or you're reading a novel or watching a movie and a reference to King Solomon's mines comes up, his gold mines provides the source of his wealth. Well, in a literature course, you might be reading some of Solomon's literature. You might be seeing how other writers have referred to Solomon. Probably for us in this course, the most significant thing about Solomon is that he'll construct a city. The city of Jerusalem. That city that we've taken as a symbol of the Hebrew legacy. At the start of Solomon's reign, Jerusalem is just a crossroads out in the middle of nowhere. There's really not much there. By the end of his reign, it's a beautiful city, built on a mountain, and the city originally designed to kind of sweep down the mountain. I've got a depiction here of Jerusalem in the time of Solomon. You may be able to make out the walls around the city to protect it from invasion and that kind of thing. And at the top of the mountain that this city kind of wraps around, at the top of the mountain, the whole focal point of the whole city is the temple. I've got a depiction here of the temple that Solomon builds. It's the first permanent place of worship for the Hebrew people. Or at least it was intended to be permanent. It's long since been destroyed. But before Solomon's time, there'd been a tent that was carried around from city to city that people would worship outside of. Today we use the Old English word a tabernacle to refer to that tent, but that word tabernacle is just an old-fashioned English word that means a tent. But Solomon envisioned a permanent place of worship, and you can read descriptions of the temple and the architecture and the tapestry and the furniture and all that kind of stuff in the Hebrew Bible. Well, eventually Solomon dies, and believe it or not, there's yet another civil war fought over who's going to be the next king. One of the problems with the United Monarchy is they can never figure out how to get from one king to the next without there being a civil war over things. But this time something different happens, and we enter another kind of unique period in world history. And that's a time that historians call the divided monarchy.